Hello, my name is TS Page, and this video is going to be going over quite an important topic for all of you new and emerging Lost Halls runners. This video is going to be a complete and full guide on how to run a complete void run. I am skipping over Cult for the most part because it's very simple. Listen to raid leaders. If they're half decent, you will survive. And yeah, so this video is going to be focusing on a full void run as well as the chance that you get a spooky boy. It will be covering all of that. So I will have timestamps on screen over everything that we will be going over, starting from the first Oryx room to the home room. Well, you don't really have to skip to that because, it'll be after this little talking section. First, every different type of room. Then we got Marble Colossus. We've got Void. And I will be going in depth on both of those bosses. This video should get you completely prepared for a full void run and Marble Colossus run. Even if you don't have the greatest of groups, unlike what we had here, this was a fantastic group. I'm sure if you watch this video, you will have a far better and more in-depth understanding of the Lost Halls as far as how you should see it from a rating standpoint. Okay, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Peace. Okay, so when you guys load in on the minimap, you'll see 1 to 4 towers to break. And so once you break one of these towers on screen, you will then open up a pathway into the next starting room. You'll see this here in just a second once we get started. But this room is pretty essential. Another thing that is very key about these rooms, there will never be a crusade in the first room after you break a tower. So as you can see here, we have a bats and rats room. So you will never have a crusade. You will only have bats, rats, golems, and Oryx rooms from the start. Okay, and so right here, I basically just speed up the video. Whenever there's useless parts, I will speed up the video for all future reference. I had to take care of some PM, so I fell behind, but essentially we make it to a pot room. And so the only reason pot rooms are really useful for a void run is getting a dex fusion out of one of the gray pots that you saw me shooting just a few seconds ago. So if you get a dex fusion, make sure you save it for the actual void entity and do not use it early because it has very good purposes for later on in the void run, which I'll go over later in the video. Okay, so as you can see right now, we are approaching our first Oryx room. So Oryx room is a room you're going to see a lot, well, just as much as any other room, but it's going to be one that you're going to spend a lot of time doing because of the nature of the room and the respawns. So, as you can see here, there is a big spawner boy right in the middle, and as he flashes red, he will respawn. And in this interaction, there's actually a lot that can happen. So, when he respawns, which you'll see here in a second, Mystics, if there is one, this is your time to stasis. This allows people to go in, get damage on the spawner, and push him into the group, essentially skipping a whole phase. Now, if that is not an option, you should tend to back up. If there's no Mystic and there's no stasis incoming, you should back up, make way, and don't get sat on by the respawns, which will come and they will hurt. Okay, so right here I was actually PMing people, and so I started to miss the crusade, but here in a second a commander will come into frame, and he's the one with the little mark on him. He is the one that you are going to want to focus on the most as he pushes into group here. As you can see, all of the other ones can be stasis, paralyzed, slowed, and everything else. The commander can only be stunned. Alright, and knights, this is your time to shine whenever a crusade pushes, because stunning the commander is very essential to keeping people alive, okay? And so, if you do not stun the commander, he will wreck the group. Get that through your heads. It's happened a lot. I've seen many 8-8 pops because of him. Do not let him get into the group, and if he is, make sure he is stunned. Also listen to leader callouts for this, because they will be calling crusades every time they see one pushing in. Okay guys, here we have Spooky Boy. So, for any of you guys who don't know, Spooky Boy, also known as Spectral Sentry, is a giant gray Reaper looking thing that runs in a group, shooting out a bunch of starred shots for around 40 seconds, teleporting 4 times. So, all of his teleports are relatively evenly spaced. I don't remember the exact timings. There are some more knowledgeable leaders that know. All you need to know, though, is that Spooky Boy will teleport, and if a rogue is invisible and he rushes and finds Spooky Boy, it is easily possible for him to teleport into group. So as you can see here, he is teleporting whenever he goes small, and then he regrows as he teleports and is temporarily not shooting. But so as we can see here, he's got a lot of shots that all do around 150 damage, but people actually like to stay near him because you get 5 fame. But if you are new to Lost Halls and do not want to risk it, it is a very, very, very sketchy guy that you do not want to mess with. Spectral Sentry is very, very strong, does a lot of damage, and you cannot kill him. You can only wait for him to despawn. Okay, so right here we reach our first golem room. As you can see, we have a big boy in the hallway, as we like to call him, the big brown golem that will always push into the hallway unless there's some silly shenanigans going on, which occasionally does happen. The sad boy that's on the screen right now, which is the dark blue one, Spiky Boy, which is a lighter blue golem, and then you'll see an angry boy here in a few seconds. That is the one that shoots the orange shots. Alright, so we have another golem room coming up here, so I can better describe all the phases for you. So up here we'll see that the big boy will push into the hallway yet again. Here right about now, here he comes. So he'll push into the group best he can, and then he'll fall back to the middle of the room. Once he is at 1/4 health, he will then try and push back into the group, but usually you'll just kill him at that point. But if there are not knights, he can insta-pop you, but if you're being careful, he won't jump all the way into the group. So just make sure you give him a little bit of space and you'll be fine. As you can see, we push him to half health. He'll run back to the middle of the room. Once we get him down to 1/4, he will push back in, and right there we chase him down and followed him through, and we're able to take care of him very, very quickly. Golem rooms are very nice. They are very easy to clear. As long as you clear all of the angry boys and spiky boys and all of the golems really in general, you'll be a-okay. There will be nothing really to worry about. But just take it slow and be relatively careful when clearing good old golem rooms. Okay guys, so here we have our first real run-in with the slime room. As you can see right now, bats and rats push in and are a lot more aggressive than the actual slimes. But other than that, they just spawn a little bit, small little spinny thingies, they just stay still. Just avoid them, run around them, you're gonna be fine. Alright, so as you can see, big slime in the middle, big tentacles is what he shoots. As you can see, the knight was able to stun him, and that is a very key thing to do. If you have a knight, you should definitely stun these things. They are very essential to stun. No tentacles, very easy to do. As you shoot him and he becomes smaller, he will spawn more of the regular small slimes, and that's pretty much all there is to it. The small slimes, if you push the big slime really fast, the small slimes can stack up on top of each other and create some pretty high damage, almost stack shots, kind of stack shots. But as long as you're just wary of that and you see the slimes, smaller slimes spawning, you will be absolutely fine. There's nothing really to fret about with regular slime rooms. Something else I'd like to mention real quick with the text you just saw on screen. Make sure you are never peeking rooms. I don't know if I've said this somewhere else in the video, but make sure you never peek rooms that do not need to be peeked or the raid leader does not tell you to be peeked. Very important. It gets people killed. Do not do it. Right here we're about to approach the Marble Defender, who is basically the bridge guardian of the Lost Halls. He is the gatekeeper, and he's a very, very simple boss. In this case, you would get on the right wall, and you would need to get on the far side wall, and basically the arrows will start shooting in a zigzag pattern back and forth until you guys push it to half health. And then after that, you basically all just want to go run the middle and just shoot it until it dies. It's pretty very simple with a decent raid group. Make sure you dodge the arrows though in the zigzag pattern, and if the Marble Defender is already activated before you get there, make sure you Don't rush in. The arrows will already be shooting, and they will not favor you. And if you just rush in before your before the arrows are like either safe to walk into or the arrows are done shooting, they will pop you. It's probably one of the most common deaths in all of Lost Halls. So I cannot stress it enough. Do not, do not run straight in if the Marble Defender is already activated and for some reason you are late. Okay? Remember that, please. Okay guys, so Marble Colossus is a very simple fight for most of it. Right here we have the first phase where he's pretty much useless. He will shoot some shotguns into the group, but they will overall not do too much damage, so don't worry about it. Priest will heal you if you have good Priest. Alright, so next up, he will push into his Tentacle Phase, as you can see right here. Those yellow shots do paralyze, but not for very long. So if you get paralyzed into a tentacle, that is the only time you'll Nexus. If you're paralyzed just in the middle of the tentacle, you will be absolutely fine. And so right after the Tentacle Phase, he will push into his good old Circle Phase. He'll circle around the room, completely damageable, and once you push him, he will fall back to middle for another quick damage phase. Here you want to push him until he spawns this nice golden potato. And this nice little potato here is always going to be spawning throughout the battle, multiple at a time, sometimes just one in this case, and sometimes two in different patterns that I will be going into more as we get a little bit further into the video. But these potatoes, if they are alive on your screen, they are your #1 priority, because if they are alive, the Colossus is not damageable. So, pretty plain and simple. If you see, you shoot, and yeah, that's basically all there is to the potatoes, and we'll see them more again in some of these future phases. Speaking of future phases, we've got a pointless little jump phase here where he just kind of jumps towards the group, not even in the group. Shoots some paralyzed shots and spawns actually a lot of confused shots, but is overall pretty harmless during this phase if you have some good priests. Once you push him, he will go on a wide rotation, as you can see here, pushing through group, and then coming around, he will be damageable this whole rotation. So if you're a raider and you're a melee looking to get some damage, this is a great time to do so. So once he falls back in middle here, he will spawn another 2 potatoes. I actually make a slight slip up in one of my calls here. Quite a odd rotation on these 2 potatoes. But as you can see, there are 2 potatoes, one coming from the left and one coming from the right, no matter where you are. And these 2 potatoes, basically all you do, you shoot them whenever they come around, whenever they come through group, and once these things get good and dead, you'll be able to push Marble Defender to his next phase. So we actually did really good here. We almost did it in 2 phases. You're extremely close, but not quite. Slight miscall on my part, but you know, it was a weird rotation, so couldn't do much about it, and it was still relatively quick. But after that, both potatoes are dead. You got a fat Tentacle Phase, very wide, very easy damage phase for most classes except for melees. And then you have the inside-outside potato phase. So inside-outside potato phase, you've got one on the inside running around and near the Marble Defender, as you can see there. The one on the outside is really easy for melees to get and is easily damageable by melees, and the one on the inside is good for ranges and archers and stuff like that. And I'm going to replay this phase a couple of times, but this is the unstable black arrow phase, or just the unstable phase, as most of your raid leaders will call it. This one, the arrows will shoot out and very hard to dodge unless you're very meticulous on how you approach it. Yeah, you just want to weave in and out there. Priest, this is a great time to pull out your Puries if you have them. This is a very good Puri phase because unstable makes the boss very hard to hit, and you need to get damage in order to push him out of that phase. So yes, it's very essential to get yourselves good priest on that phase, as well as try and dodge, attempt to dodge, because the unstable arrows do a lot of damage. So after that unstable phase, he will be in another damageable phase, kind of like normal, and you just push him. It's a better range damage phase for almost everyone because it's a very bullet hell kind of thing. But once we do that, you'll get into the final Tentacle Phase, as you can see here. Usually you want to stay with the group here unless you really lag and you're really confident in dodging, because there will be a 3 potato spawn here. There will be one on the outside, very outside, that'll run through the group, one a little bit more inwards that we are focusing now and just killed, and then there will be one on the very inside that you will see here that we have to really push in to get to. So already this group doing an absolutely great job. Already taken out 2 of the potatoes and needs to work on the 3rd one. So for the 3rd one though, if you're not comfortable with the Marble Colossus yet, you do not need to push in by any means. But in order to get damage on it, you will likely need to push in unless you are a very, very solid ranged class. So for me as a ninja and other melees, you can see we push in here and manage to take it all out. And so that's basically the end of the first main fight. Once you finish that kind of survival phase of sorts where you kill those 3 potatoes, he will go into what we like to call this good old Puda phase. Get a nice little troll message here, but this Puda phase, as Lost Boys likes to call it, is pretty useless. He doesn't do any damage. He's very, very mundane until he starts back up right around now and he starts to reinvigorate his glow. Okay, and so there's a multitude of different phases he can do, and they all vary just a little bit based on his amount of void and how much he has become void. You'll see over time that his color will change from yellow to blue as he becomes more void. I'll replay this section so I can get through all of the phases he goes through, because he goes pretty much through every single one of them, which is really nice for me because it makes describing all the phases pretty easy. And yeah, so we'll get this replay started right now, and then we will talk about the phases. So to start out, we get a mini jump where he jumps into group and he shoots out a bunch of little paralyzed shots. Next we get a darkness phase, kind of a reskinned unstable arrow phase that I talked about so much earlier, and that one's pretty good for damaging as long as priests are all pressing spacebar. After that, we then have a petrify circle where he will do a rotation around the outside of the, well, mid outside of the room. Not quite a perfect circle or anything, but he will petrify. If you get sat on, you will get insta-pop, so it is very, very bad to get sat on by him, but he shoots pretty infrequently during that phase, so it's pretty safe. Next up, we have another jump phase where he just jumps in and shoots a bunch of paralyzed shots, and then after that, he does this nice little spaghetti phase here. Just like earlier, the paralyzed shots that we saw a little bit earlier in the fight, just as his regular form. He's very mundane during this phase, and it's not that big of a deal if you get hit by it. Priest will almost always out-heal that phase by any means. Another important thing to note here is that these phases have no particular order. I've covered all 4 of the main ones that will pop up, but these change from time to time. It is random number generated. It's possible to get a bunch of the same ones every time in a row, and it's possible to get all of these blind shots. So really, it's all up to luck what you get from the Marble Colossus final phase, but as long as you just are prepared for anything and listen to the raid leader, you'll be absolutely fine for almost all of it. So yeah, normally here, instead of doing a chest, we would divide up the groups evenly, so rather than just rushing into void with no vial, we would divide ourselves up evenly beforehand, but in this case we don't really have the opportunity to do so because, you know, we don't want to deal with pre-activated void, so we all go ahead and head in. And this actually makes for a little bit better of a description for big groups because it actually is a little bit better of a scenario here for the bigger groups. Another thing is Dex Effusions. There's usually one person who will pop as soon as the void entity comes out of the pure evil and formulates himself. Right here, you'll pop a Dex Effusion and you'll rotate with the void entity throughout this whole phase, getting as much damage as possible. The Dex Effusion really helps out throughout these phases, and that's what I was talking about earlier, way earlier in the video, with the Dex Effusions from the pot room. This is what they are used for, and there will be another phase during the void entity where Dex Effusions find themselves readily available. So ironically enough, with how well this group was doing, the rotation damage was very, very slow, and we actually start to get overrun a little bit by minions, but nothing too worrying. but the mid split came really, really late. Usually it's like after a full rotation or even a 3/4 rotation, but it took us more than a rotation and a half to get ourselves a mid split. Almost 2 full rotations, but more than a rotation and a half. Okay, and so right now I'm replaying this section because I think there's a lot more describing to be done for all of the players who have never done this before. So, or at least the players that are less confident and know less about it. So essentially, what we're going to be doing here is throughout this first half to full rotation, your main goal is to only focus on void. And if you really get, confused and get separated from the group, I highly recommend, rather than trying to get back in the group and risking another confuse into a sketchy situation, that rather than that, just breaking off and starting to focus minions if you do get confused and separated from the group, because you will lose your heals, and focusing the minions that spawn while separated from group will be a big help. So mid-split, for those of you guys who don't know, I just used that term earlier, is when the split down the middle happens and the basically this pie, this circle that we are fighting the void entity on is cut in half, and there's a 3-gap split, and basically that is where you want to focus on getting our balance, is crossing that whenever there's the mid split. So you can see right here that we get ourselves this nice little mid split, and when it comes on, the group on the minimap, as you could see, split itself up as best as it could, and I even switch over to the other side where I see that there is less people, and so this is a very key component to doing it if there's no calling beforehand. Normally the groups will be pre-divided in regular runs, but we did not have that opportunity here. So yeah, if you do not have a pre-divided run, just get yourselves divided up as evenly as possible. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now let's get into the real void fight phases. So normally in these situations, the smaller group will have a lot of minions spawning over, but this group did a very good job. If you see minions, that is your #1 priority, guys. But if he ever goes to middle, this is your chance to damage. He has 4 to 5, I think it's 4 different shot patterns that he can do if he runs to middle and stops his rotation. The fidget spinners, as we like to call them, is the phase you just saw there. That is the best phase for getting in a lot of damage, because there's a large window for free damage there where he does not go to outside. But I will show you guys here that it's very essential for you guys to focus minions and then on the void, because here is the best way to look at minions. Minions are going to overrun you if you do not kill them. The void will stay a constant. The void will never change. The damage, you can do damage as long as you need. Alright? The void is a constant. And as you can see here, we get our 4 split, and pretty simple stuff. Yeah, just more dividing yourselves into groups. But yes, focus minions. You can see here, I'm going to zoom in here every time I do it. The void will be circling around, and then there will be a minion spawn. And rather than shooting the void entity, I will start shooting the minion as I do here. It starts out in the earlier phases, he'll spawn waves of small minions rather than spawning his medium boys and big boys, which I will both point out. But all the small little gumball looking ones are called small boys by most raid leaders, at least from what I know, unless it's different in other servers, but those are the smallest ones. And as you can see here, he goes back to middle, which is a great damage phase, and he actually throws a big boy onto our group. That's what a big boy looks like right there. They have a lot of health, and they can do a lot of damage, but they are stunnable by knights, which is what is awesome about the minions. They are all stunnable by knights. So you can see here the void's running past, and I'm not even worrying about it because minions are always the #1 priority. I will sound like a broken record at the end of this video, but it is very essential. A lot of new players and fresh runners do not understand the importance of focusing minions before void, and it kills so many runs, and it just hurts to see. So as you can see, no minions, I focus on void. As soon as there is a minion, I see the shots, even while I'm darkness, I immediately start shooting it. So he goes back to middle one more time, and I'm pretty sure we push him here because he's already on really low health. Fidget spinners, guaranteed push. because it's a really, really easy phase to get damage on. We did not see all the phases, but I will call them out because here soon we will get to see them. So the only time you ignore minions is whenever he is in middle and completely damageable. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit against my word here and have the name of the different phases pop up on screen. That way you can read them while I describe this little section here. So while he's in the middle here, after you have pushed him from his supersonic speed and he has said all ends now, you'll see it in chat, he will spawn a wave of 3 staggering. I don't know if that's the right word. Staggering, we got small boy, medium boy, then big boy, all being thrown towards the inside of your corner. And then after that, he will throw 3 big boys to the outside. So on that third big boy, you just saw the first one get thrown to the outside there. I'll call out the second one here in just a second. Here it comes. There it is. There's big boy number 2. But when the third big boy gets thrown to the outside, what you're going to want to do if you have Dex Effusions in the run, or at least get yourself mentally prepared for this, if you have Dex Effusions, what you're going to do is you're going to see that third big boy get thrown to the outside, and everyone's going to run middle, pop their Dex Effusions and all their fusions. We'll see it happen here. There we go. We got a bunch of buffs. Now you're going to be super ultra buffed. I think I check my stats here in a second, and I have extremely high DPS. And so, as you can see, whenever you push out there, you do have a big boy still to kill. So that's always your main priority, as I said earlier, is shooting the minions first. I never shoot Void if there's a minion in my quadrant. Here we go, we got a medium boy. First thing I do, start shooting it, just completely ignore the Void. Alright, you can get overrun by minions, as I said, but you cannot get overrun by Voids. Voids are constant. Another thing that is very important about this phase, especially in smaller groups, is if you are a healer, a stunner, or a buffer, it is very essential that you dodge. Don't worry about dodging the shots from the medium boys and whatnot. Only really focus on dodging shots from the Void entity themselves. Those are shots that will silence, and those are the shots that will render you useless for a extended period of time. So as you can see in the chat right now, Void Entity number 1 has died and has sent a message. There's 1 of 4 varying messages, and then there's 2 and 3 and 4. Usually there's a little bit more space between the 4 messages, but not in this case. And so once you've got all 4 of those Voids pushed, you're then going to have him grow up out of the middle, here you'll see, and he will shoot a wave of 12 gigantic shots. Raid leaders will try and count these, and whenever those 12 shots are done, everyone will push in together. Alright, and then this is when you should be able to finish him off. He will spawn big boys during that phase 2. Honestly, whenever he becomes damageable after he shoots out that wave of 12 shots, just go in, ignore the big boy. Knight should keep it stunned. If not, just do the best you can to dodge. The fight will be over in no time after that. As you saw, it was dead within seconds after that final phase. And then this is chest. That's all it is. That's all it is, really. So yeah, it's a pretty stressful dungeon if you don't know what you're doing. But it is a very fun and rewarding dungeon. A lot of great loot is to be had from doing Voids. As you can see here, I get a nice fat red bag and get 2 life and a UB Dex. I was so hyped I was gonna oh yes, I'm gonna get a T13, gonna get a reskin topped, and then instead I got, just a UB Dex. So that's great. But yeah. So yeah, that's your basic guide and intro into doing the most revered boss in the game, the Void Entity. So yeah. If there are other guides like this that I see that are of quality, I know GHCD made one. I'm going to link his video in the description. More brief guide relatively quickly after Lost Halls 2.0 was made. And this one I hope was more in-depth in giving you guys a full rundown of how to be a good raider. So if you did stick to the end of this video, I do appreciate you. It means a lot. If you'd leave a like, it would mean a lot as well. Subscribe, do whatever. It means a lot, as I said just a few seconds ago. And I'm really bad at outros. I'm really, really bad at outros. But yes, thank you for watching. If there's anything I missed, please let me know in the comments. I will respond to anything. If you have any questions, also put that in the comments or at me at Discord, and I will more than happily respond to anything you have, because there's likely something I missed in the multitude of time that I spent editing, rewriting, watching this video. I had to have missed something. Let me know in comments. I'm ready. But thank you so much for watching. That's all for this one, and peace.